Good afternoon, and what is a mild, grey and overcast day. It is Tuesday the 2nd of May. I've got a nice hot cup of tea. And I have a parcel to unbox. Let's just get the knife out. Okay. Just click with it. Packing tape there, and let's see what I can get. There we go. And there's a book in here, I know that, but it is nicely packaged. I'll pull that out, and what I have got is a copy of Terminator, the role-playing game from Nightfall Games. So, now Nightfall Games is basically a Scottish role-playing company, best known for Slay Industries, which it originally published in 1993, 1994, and then sort of it basically kind of lost control of it, kept control of it, and several other publishers have attempted to support it, but to really no avail. But now has complete control and has brought back some excellent supplements for it, some really good content, and developed a second edition. It also has, surprisingly, the license for the Terminator. Now, there has never been a Terminator role-playing game before. There has been a Terminator a miniatures combat game published by Leading Edge Games, when everyone went, but you did the Aliens role-playing game, couldn't we have a Terminator role-playing game? And that didn't happen. Anyway, we have a Terminator role-playing game now. So, the machines rose from the ashes of the nuclear fire. Their war to exterminate mankind had raged for decades, but the final battleground would not be fought in the future. It will be fought here, in our presence, tonight. It's the 2020s. The world is a wasteland, broken by the machines we built, our own creations, our own hubris. Not in some distant future, but today, now. The machines think they've won, but there's one last chance for humankind, a secret weapon that Skynet, in its infinite calculations, could never have anticipated: you. The Terminator RPG is the official role-playing game based upon the Terminator movie and associated graphic novels published by Dark Horse Comics. Featuring Nightfall Games' S5S system, this core rulebook is a toolbox to help you create your own campaigns or one-shots, including detailed multi-page campaign arcs, campaign seeds, mini-missions, weapons, detailed locations, NPCs from the movie and graphic novels, and over 30 Terminator types. 2 mission packs are included, enabling you to relive the Terminator movie and join the fight to bring down Skynet in a not-so-distant future war. This core rulebook also serves as a source book for the first Terminator movie and its expanded universe. The Terminator RPG extrapolates from hardcore existing canon to create a living, breathing world with a multitude of possible and probable timelines. Either play either pre-generated characters or create your own, tailored to your preferences, weapons choices, and a role within your team. If your character is killed, a new one can be brought in from the future, past or present. That new character can be many things, including alternate you from a divergent timeline. The terror and desperation of facing unstoppable cyborgs are yours to bear, but you don't have to go alone. Only united with your fellow resistance fighters can you hope to beat the machines and save mankind from extinction. There we go, quite a detailed background. And of course, you've got the saltire there to indicate that this publisher is Scottish. So, you have a role-playing game based essentially on the material presented in the 1980 film, or so, 1984, I think, something like that. Terminator film shot by James Cameron, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, which gave us the Terminator, the unstoppable, cyborg monster, and then of course essentially the content that spun out of that, not necessarily in the next few films, but in the comic books, because sometimes the comic books can go away and really develop content material based upon the film that is really interesting. Dark Horse Comics was certainly doing it. The publisher was very big on taking movie franchises and turning them into comic book stories, not just replicating them but developing the worlds. And it did it with the Aliens worlds, and as well as Predator, and that's another role-playing game we haven't had a Predator role-playing game, and of course it with Terminator, and that's the other source material for this book. So let's crack this book open and find out what it's like inside. Now, the S5S system is kind of designed for cinematic style combat. Not necessarily wuxia combat style of Hong Kong cinema, but cinematic combat of sort of like of action movies. So, got a great cover, and this is written by Andrew E.C. Gasker. Now that's important. That's an important name because he also writes an awful lot of content and material and scenarios for the Aliens role-playing game from Free League Publishing. And they're kind of basically, if you think of 80s science fiction action franchises, what you think of Terminator, Predator, and Aliens are kind of fall into that kind of big box, full of science fiction action movies. But it's also got a good list of other subsequent writers, but here's a good starting point. So we open up, we've got an introduction, a contents list, introduction, basically showing cyborg frame walking out of the flames, getting at the sort of like the key tenets of the game, directing the action, another now, factions in the future war, including 21st century warlords, the machines, collaborators, the human resistance, and so on. There are lots of stories to be told around those. Agents of John Connor, global resistance, including Mir, space station, global resistance, Spetsnaz, Skynight for the future, and so on. So you've got really just some, even just within these few pages, you've got some interesting ideas and sort of connections to make within a campaign. Then we go back to the past. We have the phone book killer. On May 13th, 1984, the infamous phone book killer began a killing spree that took down nearly 24 lives and left 8 more in critical condition. The killer had a chosen victim named Sarah Connor and worked his way through the Connors listed in the LA County phone book. And then we have the prophecies of John Connor, a photo of our time. An interesting thing essentially is what we're dealing with is a role-playing game where right now the world is an apocalyptic disaster, and then we have the kind of delights and pleasures sort of like of gaming in 1984. So we've got a bit of a background and so on, just the timeline there, coming from 1984 through 86 to 97, all the way up through the offensive against the Skynet and future war, and what happens next. Then we have advice on running the game for your game master, referee, mission themes, inevitability, paradox types of play. So whether you're running a cinematic action or campaigns, so on. Advice there for the game master, even before we get to what you're going to be playing. Ideas for player characters, and then suggestions for creating NPCs, because essentially you've got a huge wide range of it. Just ordinary people, and can be turned into interesting player characters or NPCs. Then we have advice for what it was like playing in the 1980s. So pop culture, self-importance, brink of war, world of excess. Because at that point, certainly during the early to mid 80s, you're talking about the depths of the Cold War, the threat of nuclear confrontation between the USA and the Soviet Union, and then interesting tip, getting there, arriving in the new era. So you've got a table of sort of like how do you arrive in the past, blending in, finding a base of operations, just setting up the whole thing of playing in that setting period. You know, when you're at a time, and so on. Character creation for the period. So engineer, grunt, hacker, historian. I'd be interesting. You know, playing a historian, going back in time is always what you wanted. You know. Medic, pilot, scout, strategist. They're all sort of options there for your more physical, for action characters. Before we get into actual the details of what a character looks like, how they're made up. And then list of traits, skills and traits. Expressions of those. So this is all about that. Then we. You know, options here. You can play a cyborg if you want to, if that's optional. You know, so that, and then we get into rules and mechanics. And what you're doing now, it's a dice pool system. You're rolling 10-sided dice to get successes. You need to succeed on like a skill die, and then after that, every die that you roll which exceeds the target is a further success. So that adds in margins of success. So you know, and you can have things like, you know, you can effects ranging from a serious failure to an unbelievable success, depending upon how many you know, you have rolled on the success die, and then and plus the skill dice. Combat. There's not a lot of illustrations in here, I have to say, but the layout is clean, easy to kind of read, and I think, you know, would have been interesting. Would have been nice if you know, if you're basing it upon a particular license, if it's sort of like you had some kind of stills from the movie, or you know, from the source material, basically from the comic books, that would have been kind of cool. And then so we've got quite a detailed combat system, so it's not surprising given the prevalence of combat in the stories, because they are fighting against the unstoppable monster that is the Terminator. So it's all in there. You know, we do have that's a kind of nice art, you know, nice piece, you know, nice version of one of the scenes in the film. So I was saying there wasn't any art. There is some art, but it's not heavily illustrated. You've got the there's sort of, I think there's some of the sample pre-generated player characters from the quick start, and we have, you know, another kind of scene reminiscent of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And we you know, rules in there for not just personal, you know, one-on-one combats. We've got road battles as well, because hey, there's always the effect of being chased, even if against, you know, where you're trying to board a behemoth kind of vehicle like that. So we get a little bit Mad Max at the same kind of time. Psychological warfare and fear, because, you know, you're facing with the unstoppable creature that had no emotions. It just wants to wipe you out. And then special weapon rules, you know, for weapons used by both the Terminators and by the Resistance when they're able to get hold of them. Then we have rules for hacking, and that uses sort of like a little diagrams of net architecture. So, you know, you've got one player character who's going to play the hacker, who is up against network security, and there we have, you know, kind of 80s style Terminators, you know, dressed in a kind of 80s kind of style, and then we deal with it after the fight. We'll get into equipment and post-apocalyptic economy. Of course, the importance of dogs, because they can smell if someone isn't human, i.e. someone's a Terminator. So yeah, bring into things like armor, survival kits, that kind of equipment. So, you know, so environmental protection equipment, armor, computers, using technology in line with different skills. You know, things like lockpicks and restraints and locks. Medical equipment. Some basic vehicles. Melee weapons. We'll get onto weapons in general. This is kind of these are not given really kind of names. You've got like heavy pistol, light pistol, assault rifles, hunting rifles, that sort of thing. They're generic. It really doesn't matter what they are necessarily. All the way up to something like anti-tank rockets, anti-personnel mines, and then we've got the weapons of the future employed by the Terminators. You know, plasma weapons, laser pulse weapons, and then we get into the machines. So make, model, and number. Hunter killers. You know, basically the things we actually see at the kind of the beginning of the Terminator film of the future. HK Ball. And then, you know, things like we've got humanoid hunter killers. So going for that's the T's. So we've got anything here. We go start off with the T000 or T500. Infiltrators. So Series 600. Series 700. So you're not necessarily getting all the way. You go all the way up to. Let's have a look. The T800, which is the one we kind of recognise from the films. And then other models are not quite so familiar, including a robot dog, the TK90, and even other animals. Then we get into basically dealing with sort of like background material plus stuff that you can kind of technology which is sort of like new to the era. So particular individuals, you know, that you can kind of encounter as members of the resistance, trying to infiltrate you, your cells, dealing with time displacement. And then we've got individual Marvel determinations, Skynet files on humans of interest. So Sarah Jeanette Connor, and then General John Connor, Kyle Reese, and then Lieutenant Ed Traxler from the LAPD, and then PI Hal Vukovic tracks PI, and presumably characters not quite so recognisable. You know, these are I'm guessing these are taken from the comic strips. But, be interesting to see whether you can find some reprints of those. And then we get the actual stats for them separate further on. No, not because the stat blocks aren't particularly big. And then campaigns and missions. So, you know, we've got the phone book killer, a scenario inspired by the film The Terminator. And then, what's we got? The Killer in Me, a scenario inspired by the graphic novel The Killer Within. Yeah, and then, you know, so we've even got sort of like an example network architecture there, which essentially, you know, as the hacker, you're basically trying to roll successes to proceed further deeper in to solve a problem. There's the character sheet, and nicely, this is a nice touch. I don't often see that. There is a full index on the inside on the inside cover, and you've got a QR code for the book itself. So that is the Terminator role-playing game published by Nightfall Games. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. Lastly, if you want to be alerted to get more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a package containing a book or game, which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do click on the subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing of the Nook. Be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.